Okay, th31 asks, how is your 6K from chargebacks?
Hmm? My what?
th31 asks, how is your $6,000 from chargebacks?
Ugh.
I'm sure there's a backstory there. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, I actually don't know what he's talking about either, to be honest. But I'd
Okay.
kind of like to know. Yeah.
No. Next question. If you remember, we'll come back to it. But
All right.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
All of this evidence seems really bad on Etzer and could have really affected his reputation with the community. What about Etzer's side? There are two sides to every story. While Etzer was doing a public Q&A with Boom Kitty and others, I asked him a question related to the situation. His response was, well, unsatisfactory. However, he sent me a friend request after saying he didn't know what I was talking about. I was waiting for his response, but he was seemingly playing it like he was oblivious. After sending another message and next day pressuring him, he finally gave some answers. Etzer first makes a lengthy yet also vague response to the situation. He admits that he did not mention it on stream because it was a sensitive subject. He claims that the entire situation stems from a gambling addiction he had linked to TF2, and even goes as far to say it landed him in the hospital. However, there are two important things of note here. 1. He says that he's incapable of accessing his account and thus unable to give the items back. And 2. He's tried to deal with it on an individual level, which seems to imply that he attempted to settle the claims directly with victims. You should already be seeing problems with his narrative, but let's just put this aside for now. In response, I call into question how much he actually tried to settle the disputes, bringing up how he didn't pay back his cent, as well as inferring that he might not have been really trying that hard to get back into his account. Surprise, surprise, he doubles down. He claims for the past 2 years, he's been working with the victims and paying them back when possible, even saying if he could find anyone and had the money, he'd pay them back. He also further elaborates on his inability to gain access to his account. Lastly, he says that he's tried to get Valve to give the items back, but they refused. It's at this point you can see Etzer's defense coming apart. If you somehow don't remember, out of the 10 victims interviewed, only 1 said they were able to get their stolen money back, and he had to contact Etzer's father directly and beg for months. Let me repeat that it was the victim that had to contact Etzer, and not Etzer who reached out to the victims. Even if there are other victims that we did not know about that he was busy paying back, why is it that the victims who are most easily accessible to him through his own trust page didn't receive one bit of communication, not even to let them know that he was working to pay them back? It seems like a direct contradiction. In addition, it's highly probable that he's lying about his own ban. He says that his account was trade banned and cannot access certain features on Steam. If that is the case, why doesn't it show on his profile? I respond bringing up all these points as well as asking him which people specifically he contacted multiple times, and his response never answered that essential question. Instead, he provides yet more excuses for why he couldn't give the money back right away or contact the victims, saying that he had no access to those community features mentioned before. He also claimed that the victims could directly dispute with Valve and get their items back, and even said that many of them had done so. To the former point, there is still no indication on his profile that he is trade banned or VAC banned. It should be noted that his profiles on various trading websites do in fact have bans, as stated earlier. But even then, there are a whole host of other trading websites he could have used, and his Steam account is most definitely not banned. However, all that is insignificant when compared to one seemingly innocuous detail. Remember earlier when I said he came back to trade in 2017? This was inferred from the fact that Etzer's TF2 backpack made huge fluctuations back then. Notice that the amount of items in his inventory fluctuates before landing back down on the previous value. This makes it highly probable that he had traded throughout that time. That said, the latter of these two claims are impossible. Valve explicitly states that they will not refund people who are scammed. Their policy is very explicit about this and has stayed the exact same even before all of this occurred. So either Etzer is incredibly confused or, more likely, he's outright lying about this fact. After presenting all this to Etzer, he said his last attempted explanation. He once again doubles down on the idea that he contacted victims saying it was done outside of Steam. And while we know this is the case for Dispatcher with his dad, as stated before, no other victims received any attempted contact. Even if you want to claim it's victims we don't know about, he never actually provided names. On top of that, it's ludicrous to say that it's up to the victims to contact him when it's him who wronged them. There is one thing we did not address about Etzer's responses, his claims of why he charged the purchases back. Etzer, throughout his responses, claims that the chargebacks were due to an error on the part of the bank. For spending exuberant amounts of money on TF2, the bank automatically charged back all purchases between a certain time period. Now I could go into some reasons why this doesn't really add up, such as how a bank can't charge back any purchases without the permission of the cardholder, but frankly it's actually somewhat believable. Your card issuer, aka the bank, can do this sort of thing with your permission, and they can make mistakes. This sort of situation has happened even within the community. Slice, one of Crazy Man 50's top donators, had all of his donations charged back after his parents tried to charge back a single fraudulent purchase. So it's not too much of a stretch to say something similar could have happened to etzer. However, it's also reasonable to assume that the bank would have fixed an error like this after 2 years, and this is giving him the benefit of the doubt. Assume that they did it without his permission, which is frankly impossible. And even then, the reason I didn't mention it is because it simply doesn't matter. Even if the chargeback itself was somehow a 1 in a million freak accident, the fact of the matter is that etzer didn't do jack shit after all this time to pay anyone back. As stated countless times before, the victims never received any contact from etzer or a representative of etzer unless they were the one who initiated it. And even in that case, it took months and months to actually get what they deserved. The simple fact is, whether or not the chargebacks were intentional, etzer still made off with all that money and never paid it back.